going to cover now is all about the landing D365 in a complex enterprise account. I got Abhinav Saxena on the screen now. Thanks, Abhinav, for
Hello.
joining. So great to have you. And just to give you, I think, audience a little bit background what Abhinav has been doing. So Abhinav is a director of architect team covering New Zealand and Australia. And I think this is a team who's leading a lot of complicated and complex programs for the customers in their journey in the digital transformations. And Abhinav, I believe you are going to cover that particular and exciting topics to give your experience and all the insight what exactly people will need to understand, consider when they are planning to do this, start their journey really. So I would hand over it to you, Abhinav. Really, platform is all yours. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Adil. Thank you. Hey, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon and good evening for the folks in the Asia time zone. मुझे बहुत खुशी हो रही है इस प्लेटफॉर्म पे आके प्रेजेंट करने के लिए. मैंने मोहम्मद आलम को सुना. It was really good to hear from the leader of Dynamics 365 worldwide. Khurram मेरे बहुत अच्छे क्लोज दोस्त रहे हैं. मैं उनके साथ काम भी किया हुआ है दुबई में. So it's a really good platform, and thank you so much for taking the time to listen and take this time. So I'm going to share my screen, and let me know when you can see my entire screen. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Good to go. Abhinav, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. So welcome again. I'm really proud and happy to be on this forum. This is my first time. So for those people, some of you may know me from my past experiences. I might have come across you. I have been in this industry for 20 years now. This is just a very quick introduction for those people who don't know who I am. I'm an architect director for Australia and New Zealand at Microsoft. I work for the Microsoft Consulting Services, जिसका नाम अब बदल गया है. So I'll change Hindi and English interchangeably. So hopefully there should be no problem and everybody's able to follow. So I'm part of what they call Microsoft Consulting Services. So we are the arm that is responsible for delivering the elite customers of Microsoft. So customers that come to Microsoft and say कि हमने इस platform पे इतना investment किया हुआ है, we want Microsoft to come and implement this for us. So I belong to that practice, and what my experience is that I have sold over 75 logos or customers globally. And I have done over $200 million USD worth of sales in my 20 years of experience. I've lived and worked in Australia, Singapore, Dubai, US, and India. And I have got friends from across the globe. I've worked with people from across the globe, and I've worked for partners across the globe. So I've worked obviously for Microsoft. This is my second stint back at Microsoft. Worked for companies like Eclipse, Textura, Aston, Sable 37, DXC, Columbus, and Alpha People. So that's a very quick background for me. I'm very fortunate. I have experience in the entire D365 stack, as everybody is now going to know it as. There is no more ERP, there's no more CRM. It is the D365 platform. And that's how we should all leverage it going forward. So let's come to the agenda for today. The agenda for today is what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to talk about how do we land Dynamics 365 in the with a particular customer. So one of the key challenges that we have seen with Dynamics 365 is people get confused. क्या ये small and medium corporation के लिए है? क्या ये enterprise के लिए है? Can we really compete with the SAPs and the Oracles of the world? क्या हम इसको really implement कर सकते हैं इतने complex environment में? How do we position Dynamics 365? And what is the journey that I have followed in my career when I land these deals for partners and for Microsoft? And then we'll have a bit of Q&A. So very simple. I want to spend more time trying to help answer your questions, but let's start with landing some of these messages for you. So let's start with the first one. I'll just load the slide up. Oops, let's go back. Okay, so what are the key challenges when you're landing Dynamics 365, right? So let's talk about that first. What we have seen is when we go into a customer, किसी भी customer के पास आप जाते हैं, तो customer सबसे पहले बोलता है कि मेरा business बहुत unique है. I've got a very unique business model. I need these complexities. I remember it was probably 7 or 8 years ago. I was in Dubai. I was talking to a customer, and one person came up and said, "ये yellow form का print करेगा." And that was the point where the whole complexity of the business is what people make it. It is not a complexity in the process. It is a complexity behind what people hide. They're hiding behind systems. They're hiding behind their processes. And what they do is they make it overly complicated and complex. And what they do is they try to leverage that to say, "Bhai, ye jo software hai, this is will not work for me, or what I've got running already is perfect already." So the complexity is one of the key challenges when you're landing an ERP or a Dynamics 365 or a CRM sort of solution. The second thing, which is very important, is value, right? What is the value that you're bringing to this particular implementation? A lot of businesses will talk about complex processes, and what they say is, if my processes are complex, then I'm adding value to that process. That is not true, actually. The truth behind the thing is that the person or the people are trying to protect their role or things that they have learned from their previous predecessors. When they joined the job for the first time, they were told this is the way you do a process, and that is the only way they know. Very few people, there's a very small percentage of 5 to 10% people who actually will challenge the norm and will challenge the complex process and say, how can I generate value for the business? That is generally the second challenge that we see. Nowadays, and I've heard multiple questions even during Mohammed Alam's session and during Khurram's session about, on-premise. Cloud adoption. I'm telling you, even 7 years ago, I was implementing at Dubai Silicon Oasis Authority. And what I remember over there was they wanted to go on-prem for various reasons. I'm a government customer. My data won't be safe. Where will the data be hosted? What will my IT team do that I've built? These are all myths. The whole world is moving towards the cloud. And the problems that we are having is the people who are not keeping up in terms of the adaptability, scalability, privacy of what cloud brings to my business. And it is a very difficult conversation for people who do not want to understand how cloud is going to help evolve and help them perform, do better, simplify the processes. So that's your third challenge, adopting the cloud and moving to the cloud. We are now very lucky with over so many data centers across the globe that are propping up. There are new data centers coming up in New Zealand. There are new data centers coming up in Middle East. We already have data centers in India, which are being leveraged, obviously in the US and Europe. So I think as Microsoft invests more in the cloud, it's becoming far more easier to adopt and go to the cloud. And with the COVID-19 situation and the lockdown, it is now becoming even more pertinent. So how we message that adoption is super important. The next challenge that we see is people, right? And I've talked about this earlier as well. People are generally making things more complicated. The reason for that, like I said, is because that's how they learned how to do the job. Two, they don't want to change because they believe if we change it, I'm going to lose my job, right? Or they're going to get into a situation where they believe if I make any further, advances or value add, I'll look different. People will not appreciate what I'm doing. My boss won't appreciate it. So these are some of the challenges. And process, right? I've said this probably the third time I'm going to repeat it. I've always done it this way. This is the answer that you receive when you challenge and talk to anyone in the industry or to a customer saying, what is the process that you're trying to do? And one of my favorite things, which is the biggest challenge, and this is all interrelated, over engineering the solution, over customizing, creating a band-aid application landscape. What that means is, अच्छा ये नहीं चल रहा है, अच्छा यहाँ पे एक ऐप बना दो या इसको एक्सटेंड कर दो और इसको इससे इंटीग्रेट कर दो, or let's buy another system and do this, without understanding the core capabilities of what the platform has to provide you. People try to over-engineer the solution, both consultants and customers. So these are some of the key challenges which we have to be mindful when we go into a situation where we are trying to land Dynamics 365. And let me tell you one thing. The difference between landing the deal in a enterprise account versus landing the deal in a small and medium is the same. The effort is the same. The people are the same. The only difference is that in the mindset that the complexity is different. And what they try to do is they have these complex processes that they have built, or people don't have an understanding of what the solution is. So when we go and position Dynamics 365, one of the key things that we are looking for is understanding the problem. What is the problem that you're trying to solve? Is it process? Is it technology? Is it people? What is the problem? And getting to the root cause of that problem is very important, because if you do not understand the problem, you will not be able to solve that problem, no matter which platform you position, whether it is SAP, Oracle, or Dynamics 365. Now, in the case of Dynamics 365, it's a simpler proposition. The reason for that is because the platform allows you capabilities which low-code, no-code extensions, Power BI, the CE platform, the reporting platform, the integration with Office 365, where you can leverage these technologies, which is being used by customers day in and out to solve some of these problems. But coming back to that whole thing, the most important thing is the problem. The second thing is stakeholder management. Always remember, people buy from people, no matter what you say. Okay? And I've seen this for a fact, and I can give it to you in writing, that people always buy from people who they trust. And who do you trust? You trust people who understand you, are coming from a similar background, and can help you. Only those people are trusted. Until you don't have that relationship and you don't build that trust bridge, you will not be able to sell. My question I'm asking again, is the enterprise customer different from an SMC customer? SMC is small and medium. Not really, right? I've already answered that. The customer is the same. The process is the same. A procure to pay process, a order to cash process, a prospect to cash process, or hire to retire process remains the same. Whether it's SMC or enterprise, you may have more steps, you may have a little more complications, but from a process standpoint, it remains the same. So alignment with your stakeholders is very important. And what I mean by that is you need to, when you are going into position Dynamics 365, not only do you need to understand the problem, you also need to understand the people and the stakeholders whom you're dealing with. Who is the CIO? What is his or her intentions? Who is the purchasing manager? What is his or her problem? What are you trying to solve? What are they looking for? And if you take time, they will tell you. The next thing which I found very, very interesting is challenging the norm. I believe challenging the norm is very important. You need to ask the questions why. You need to challenge the customer. You need to bring the experience of other markets, industries, implementations, customers to the table. And when you're talking to your customer, you need to take that example and you need to talk to them and say why. Why can't you change? Why can't you adopt out of the box? And why can't you do this faster? Because these are the things align with any senior management. If you talk to a CEO of a company, what that person is looking to do is challenge the norm to make the company bigger, better, same cost or lower cost, increase profitability. So how do we go there? And that challenging is very important when you are positioning Dynamics 365. The next one is something that has come about, the industry solutions and the verticals. And I want to talk about this maybe a little longer. So Khurram has talked about it and Mohammed Alam has talked about it. There is a industry cloud solution motion that's happening at Microsoft, and you will see this in the next few days and weeks and months, where what we are looking to do is leverage a pre-built solution. There is no more platform. There's no more Dynamics 365. It's a combination. It's an industry cloud solution. When we talk about healthcare, for example, you're talking about leveraging Dynamics 365 for patient record. You're looking at things like Teams for setting up appointments. You're looking at D365 portals for people to log in. You're looking at Power Apps for people to access the Power Platform to mobile app पे जाके अपनी booking करने के लिए, to come and see a doctor. You're leveraging all that together to form a solution that can be leveraged. You can go to a hospital, you can go to a clinic, you can go to a health department of a country, and you can position this. And we are doing this now. We are starting to do this. There are some case studies that are emerging, and similar case studies will emerge in other areas like manufacturing. Khurram talked about some of those where you're talking about the resilient supply chain or the intelligent supply chain, where you have things like IoT integration linked back into D365, leveraging the Power BI to talk about quality, talk about production, talk about manufacturing output, and other things. That is very important, and you will see that shift in the next few weeks and months, and you will see how Microsoft is solving that problem and taking it to the customer and saying, this is how we should be implementing this. Another very important thing that we need to think about when we are positioning Dynamics 365 is the use of ISVs versus build versus partner. This is a very important thing. The reason why this, I'll tell you a story. I was of the opinion that I can build anything in D365, anything in AX, anything in CE, I can build it. Operational system, no problem. If I would go and talk to a customer, I'm telling you, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, I would go and say, I'll build it for you. I'll never say, let's leverage an ISV out of Europe, or let's leverage, say, a Xflow, which is an AP automation, or a FlintFox for pricing. I would never say that. But today, my mindset has changed. And the reason why the mindset has changed is because it is always better to partner with an ISV or a partner who has an expertise rather than trying to build it. Because when you try to build it, you are basically like trying to build something where either you don't have the expertise or the people, or the technology gap is so huge that by the time you build it, you would have burned too much money and you're not achieved the problem, right? The next thing is something that Khurram talked about, right? It's not longer an ERP, it's platform. It's the platform. It's the overall D365 platform, which ties into the industry solution from an end-to-end perspective. It's not FNO, it's not CE, it's not Power Platform. Today, the architects that are working at Microsoft, when we go and have a conversation with a customer, what we are talking about is, what is your process? I'll give you an example. We closed, we worked with a very large soft drink manufacturer recently, and it took about 9 months. And you must have seen this, right? It's very common in India and Pakistan. You have these bottles, right? You have the Pepsi bottles, you have the Coca-Cola bottles or the Campa bottles or whatever. Glass bottles jo hoti hain. The customer came and asked us, how will you manage these glass bottles for us? This is the problem statement that the customer gave us. Customer is not asking me what is F&O, CE में क्या करोगे, asset कैसे manage करोगे, procure कैसे करोगे. They are saying, I've got this glass bottle, ये कब खरीदनी है, कब इसको पिकअप करना है, ये खत्म कब होएगी, what is the inventory do I have, how do I bring it back, how do I make a count, how do I refresh it. It is very important that when we are talking to the customer, we are stitching a story together. We are stitching a process together from an end-to-end process. Do not go and say F&O में ऐसे हो जाएगा, CE में हम ये कर देंगे और Power Platform में उसको extend कर देंगे. When we are talking about positioning Dynamics 365 as a platform, we are talking about how will you create something, how will you manage it, where is it get procured from, how is the supplier going to supply it to you without making suggestions of F&O and CE. A lot of people don't believe this, but I'll tell you one fact. I have not opened Dynamics 365 in the last 3 years of selling any deal. The reason why I have not done that is because it's not needed. The feature and function is a secondary step to selling the platform and the product. It's more about how you're meeting the needs of the customer and how are you building that story and that process for the customer. And that brings me to the last point, the most important point. When you go to a customer today, the customer is asking, how are you going to meet my business outcome? What value are you bringing to the table? Why should I select you? Why should I not select someone else? Why should I not go to a PwC or an Accenture or IBM or whoever? What value as you, as a consultant, as an organization, are bringing to that customer? And all these things that I'm talking about is not once you start delivery. It is before you start delivery. It's before you get into the implementation. You need to understand what is the business outcome the customer is trying to achieve. And it is very important that this is a bigger business transformation. The buzzword of digital transformation is a subset to that entire business being transformed by this platform. We had Ready in the last few days, and one of the biggest things that we have heard, not only in this Ready, but in the last year or so, last couple of years, business applications create stickiness. I don't know if you have heard this terminology. When we talk about stickiness, what we are saying is once the business application goes into a customer site, it will attract every other thing, Office, Azure, Power Platform, there are mixed reality, IoT, data and AI. It attracts everything. Because what you have to understand is business applications, the Dynamics 365 platform is the core and the heart of a organization. And all these peripherals come into play. And as data becomes more and more important in this world, what value are we driving? What strategic decisions are we able to make? We need to present that to the customer. Only then can you position this at the enterprise level. And even for the small and medium corporations. So I think that is something that we all need to consider. Sorry. We all need to consider and we need to look at to understand what is the problem, what is the business value, and what business outcome are we achieving. And then everything else are basically the peripherals that will allow you to close this particular deal. So let's go to the last slide that I have. I want to talk about the journey, right? So when we talk about the journey, This is something that I've been doing in some way, shape, or form, probably over the last, I think I've been doing pre-sales now for 14 years, maybe 13 years. There is a discovery process. Let's not shortcut it. Even if you have an RFP, do not shortcut the discovery process. It is the foundation to understanding how the business works for a customer. It is the foundation for you to understand how and what elements of the platform need to be leveraged so that you can meet the needs of the customer. It is a consultative process. Now, I was having a conversation with someone a couple of days ago, and the consultant is asking me, the customer is only bringing the as-is process, the current process, and we are replicating it. We all know what happens when you take a standard process and you take the current process and you replicate it, right? The nuances, the problems, the challenges of all the processes that have happened over the last 2, 5, 10, 15 years all accumulate, and then you are replicating the same process which currently is not optimized again. So always talk about future state. Talk about how you can leverage the vanilla out of the box solution, right? You need to start leveraging the ISVs, the partners, and see how and where the industry clouds are going to land. This is a consultative approach where we need to go to the customer and say, Mr. Customer, we have been doing this for X number of years. We understand the process. We have seen the same process of procure to pay, hire to retire, order to cash in so many different places. These are the best practices of the industry. Let's leverage those. The next important thing that I have done is prioritization. You need to break things down. Gone are the days when customer wanted to do a 18-month implementation, 24-month implementation. Trust me, I've met enough CIOs globally to understand that this does not work anymore. It has to be smaller chunks. Take one workload, get it up and running. I'm doing something for a customer right now where we are taking them live on marketing in 14 weeks. And then we have another 14-week cycle where we are taking them live on customer service. This takes a lot of pressure off the whole organization, and it allows you to build the knowledge across that whole thing, and you can create your horizons. First, I'll do this, then I'll do this, then I'll do this, then I'll achieve the whole thing. And that is my North Star. And while you're doing all this, you need to understand what value you are bringing to the customer by that solution. How will your dollar increase? How you optimize manpower? If you see over there, I've not written reduce manpower. I've written optimize manpower. You can redirect the people in other places. And realignment of goals and business objectives is very important when you're going through this journey. The next thing is framing. Whatever you have learned till now, you need to frame it. You got to put a solution blueprint. You need to put a roadmap together, and you need to take that to the board, take that to the C-level, and you need to talk to them, get an alignment before you sign anything, before the contracts are signed, before the SOW is signed. And that's not where the journey ends. You need to have ongoing governance. Please bake that into your delivery. The goal is not to sell. Even for the sellers out there on this call, the goal is not to sell. The goal is to have a referenceable customer. A customer who will stand up and say, this company did a fantastic job for me, and I can go and implement again. And that is the only way you're going to make your next sale. And for the delivery team, I think it is very important that you went through that whole process so that you're governing the project properly and you do not drop the ball.
Abhinav, just a quick one, time check. We are almost on time. So if you can kindly.
I'm done. Thank you.
All right. Brilliant. Okay. Do we have Amin Azim? So thank you, Abhinav, for all the for the lovely session. Very useful. So there are a couple of questions. I think we got it from the audience. So first one from the Asim Zafar. So how much industry accelerator can help in speeding up the process of convincing the clients that D365 is the right fit for? Perfect question. Yes, Abhinav.
So I'll give you an example. Last year I went and had a deal with a large Japanese truck manufacturer. We went with Anata, which is a global ISV. I don't know if you've heard of them. They actually have a solution where we leveraged them and went together. We went against SAP, and the simple story is we won that deal. And this is not the only story. I can tell you 5 other stories like this where we have gone with accelerators that can help. That's why I'm saying partner with somebody who understands the industry.
Thank you. Awesome.
Yeah, hi Abhinav. It was a nice session from you. I think there are a few more questions that are coming. I think it's a very big question here. You raised in your presentation that pupil adoption is a problem. So share some real example or share how, in your experience, you avoided that thing, pupil adoption things. So इसमें थोड़ी सी more detail add करें आप please.
हाँ, तो पीपल अडॉप्शन एक बहुत ही बड़ी प्रॉब्लम है आज की डेट में, एंड हाउ पीपल अडॉप्ट एंड चेंज. तो माइक्रोसॉफ्ट में हमने एक प्रैक्टिस खड़ी की है विच इज अडॉप्शन एंड चेंज मैनेजमेंट. ACM प्रैक्टिस है. वो हम क्या करते हैं, जो भी इम्प्लीमेंटेशन में जाते हैं, दिस ACM टीम कम्स अलोंग, और जो फर्स्ट फेज होता है सोल्यूशन मॉडलिंग का, उस फेज में ये टीम क्वेश्चनर भरती है एंड दे अंडरस्टैंड फ्रॉम द वेरियस SME लीड्स कि बिजनेस में क्या चेंजेस आ रहे हैं, कैसे वो चेंजेस इंपैक्ट करने वाले हैं उनकी नौकरी, उनकी लाइवलीहुड, एंड हाउ दैट जॉब इज गोइंग टू चेंज. And what they do is they give guidance to the C-level and to the change team on the customer side of what action should be taken, what training should be given, what retraining is required, so that they understand कि ये आपकी बेहतरी के लिए कर रहे हैं. This is not something where we are trying to remove you from the job. So that ACM piece is something that companies should start looking at or partner with someone to say कि ये एक hand in hand है, which is very important in today's day and age.
Nice. Thank you so much.
Okay, I go another one. Abhinav, so you talked about this process complexity and business claiming that their processes are quite unique. So from a Microsoft point of view, what is the maximum customization you think customer would expect or Microsoft recommend to have it when they are planning their digital transformation journey?
So I'll tell you one thing. There is what we call, there's a terminology in our world called last mile, right? Last mile मतलब वो जो last का थोड़ा सा portion है to meet the industry needs. ठीक है? Now procure to pay में हमारे पास purchase requisition है, RFQ है, PO है, budget approval है, delivery है, invoicing है, correct? What you need to understand is sometimes the customer will say, can you do e-bidding, reverse auction, जैसे Ariba में होता है. So we don't have that. That's a last mile solution. When you're talking about core processes, there should be no modification in a core process. When you're talking about unique things, value add, then you can bring a partner in or you can extend the solution. You should always try and achieve a good fitment. What I have seen a good fitment is you should have at least over 80% fit of the solution. And it is your responsibility as a consultant to make sure that you get that fitment, because you have to challenge the customer. Why are you doing it like this?
Excellent.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm seeing a question from Zishan here. Can you share any success story implemented around CE and FinOps? They are implementing this scenario somewhere in UAE. So I think they are talking about some CE FinOps integration and some integrated solution. So can you share some success story around it, that scenario?
Sure, absolutely. Dubai Silicon Oasis Authority, मैंने खुद का implement किया हुआ है with Sable 37. उसमें CE and FNO था, CRM 2015. In fact, on-premise की implementation थी. UAE की implementation है, अब वो re-implement हो रही है. There are lots and lots and lots of success stories. And now the way the platform is moving, you will have a lot more interaction between CE and FNO. कि prospect quotation CE में बन रहा है, order is being executed, delivered, collected in F&O. But the customer doesn't need to know
Right.
this. The customer does not care, and the customer doesn't need to know, because there are different people who are quoting, different people who are delivering and collecting. Right?
Nice.
So there are lots of success stories, not only in UAE, but there are lots of success stories all over the world. Australia में है, अभी एक airport हमने किया है, उसमें CE, field service, enterprise asset management, fixed assets, project accounting. उन्होंने रनवे बनाया, रनवे कैपिटलाइज हुआ, फिक्स एसेट बना, उस पे मेंटेनेंस हुई, वो फील्ड में जाके उन्होंने मेंटेन किया, उसके बाद आके उसकी डेप्रिसिएशन हुई. When you're talking full life story end to end, I've now talked about every capability under the sun over there, including portal. कि somebody is logging in a request from there. App है, mobile app field service की. Examples बताए रहे हैं, बहुत सारे हैं. You can use it anywhere.
Thank you. एक और मेरा question था, in your presentation you talk about not overcomplicating the system with sort of customization. तो इस सिनेरियो में माइक्रोसॉफ्ट कहाँ पे प्लेस होता है, क्योंकि माइक्रोसॉफ्ट इनकरेज करता है ISVs को, और डिफरेंट पार्टनर्स भी ISVs बिल्ड कर रहे होते हैं, लेकिन ये इंफॉर्मेशन एक जगह पे मिलना काफी मुश्किल होती है. तो कोई ऐसी फोरम, कोई ऐसी प्लेस है जहाँ पे हम ये सारी ISVs को देख सकें, कस्टमर उनको बारे में नॉलेज ले सके?
हाँ, तो सबसे पहले मैं खुद करता हूँ AppSource. I don't know अगर आपने देखा है, माइक्रोसॉफ्ट AppSource है. That is the first place. अभी मैं आपको बताऊं, मैं मलेशिया में एक डील कर रहा था, उसमें it is for a government body. उसमें they wanted to do treasury management. Now we all know treasury management is not in Dynamics 365. तो मुझे उस समय याद नहीं आ रहा था कौन सा सिस्टम हमने यूज किया है. मैंने जाके AppSource पे देखा. SK Global is one of the well-known, treasury solutions. बहुत सारे और हैं. So that's where I would go first to find it.
Thank you. Nothing, any question from you?
No, I think we are on time. We got the next speaker line up now. So,
Perfect.
Abhinav, thank you very much for your time.